Commander Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the colony ship Endurance as it moved through the dark space between stars. The ship carried 3,000 colonists who were looking for a new home far from Earth. Jack had been doing this job for 10 years, and he knew how to keep people safe in the empty void between worlds. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the gentle beeping of sensors. Dr. Lisa Harper sat at her science station reading data from nearby star systems. Captain Alex Bennett checked navigation charts while Tony Rodriguez cleaned his weapons in the corner. Kate Sullivan listened to radio signals from space, hoping to hear something interesting. Everything changed when Kate heard the signal. The transmission came from the system 3 days away. The voice was high and musical but filled with terror. Kate worked fast to clean up the static and make the words clear. What she heard made her hands shake. "This is Elder Karn of the Kaleri people," the voice said. "Our world is under attack. The Vorthak have come with their ships of war. They kill everyone they find. They take our children away in metal boxes. If anyone can hear this, please help us. We have done nothing wrong. We only want to live in peace." The transmission cut to static and then went silent. Jack looked around the bridge at his crew. Everyone had heard the message, and they all looked shocked. Lisa worked at her computer to find more information about this Kaleri system. Alex studied his star charts to see how far away it was. Tony stopped cleaning his gun and stood up, ready for action. "Can we get more of that signal?" Jack asked Kate. Kate shook her head. That was all of it. The transmission ended about an hour ago. "I have been trying to find more, but there is nothing." Lisa turned from her computer screen. "I found something about the Kaleri in our databases. They are a peaceful species that lives on a world called Kelleris Prime. They have never hurt anyone, and they trade with other species for food and medicine. They do not have weapons or armies." Alex pointed at his navigation screen. "We can reach their system in 3 days if we change course now." "But Jack, we have colonists on this ship. Our job is to get them to safety, not to fight wars." Jack walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at the stars. He thought about the fear in that voice and the words about children being taken away. Something deep inside him began to burn with anger. He had never heard of the Vorthak before, but anyone who attacked defenseless people was his enemy. "Kate, try to contact the Kaleri system again," Jack said. "Lisa, I want to know everything about both species." "Tony, get our weapons ready." Alex set course for Kelleris Prime. But sir," Alex said, "we have civilians on board." "Those Kaleri are civilians too," Jack replied. "And they are dying right now while we talk." The crew worked through the night trying to learn more about what was happening. Lisa found old reports about the Vorthak Empire. They were a species that believed only the strong should survive. They took worlds from weaker species and killed anyone who got in their way. They had been growing their empire for hundreds of years. Kate finally got another transmission from the Kaleri system, but this one was different. The voice was older and weaker. "This is Commander Vess of the last Kaleri defense ship. The Vorthak have taken our world. Most of our people are dead or captured. We have a few hundred survivors on damaged ships trying to escape. The Vorthak leader calls himself War Leader Thex. He says the Kaleri are weak and do not deserve to live. He is hunting down our escape ships one by one." The transmission became full of static, and then a new voice came through. This voice was deep and harsh and spoke with cruelty. "Weak creatures of space," the voice said. "This is War Leader Thex of the Vorthak Empire. We have cleansed another world of inferior life. The Kaleri beg for mercy, but mercy is for the weak. If any species hears this message, know that the Vorthak are coming. Submit or die." Jack felt the anger inside him grow stronger. He looked around the bridge and saw the same anger in his crew. Lisa had tears in her eyes, but her hands were making fists. Alex was gripping his chair so tight his knuckles were white. Tony was checking his weapons again with movements that were sharp and quick. Kate was trying to send messages back to the Kaleri survivors. "How long until we reach the system?" Jack asked. 2 days and 18 hours, Alex replied. "Make it faster," Jack said. "I do not care if we burn out the engines." That night Jack could not sleep. He walked through the ship and saw that many colonists were awake too. Word had spread about the Kaleri and what was happening to them. People were angry and scared and ready to fight. Jack realized that something was changing in all of them. The human desire to protect the innocent was waking up, and it was stronger than he had ever felt before. When the Endurance finally reached the Kaleri system, Jack knew there would be no going back. Whatever happened next would change everything. The Endurance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kaleri system, and Jack Morrison felt his heart sink. Through the main viewer, he could see the Kaleri homeworld burning. Huge Vortex ships floated around the planet like metal vultures. They were using giant machines to strip away the surface of the world and load the materials into cargo ships. How many Vortex vessels? Jack asked Tony Rodriguez, who was working the weapons scanner. 12 warships and about 20 support craft, Tony replied. The warships are bigger than us, but not by much. The support ships look like miners and cargo haulers. Dr. Lisa Harper was studying the planet with her sensors. Jack, I am reading massive damage to the surface. Cities are gone. The atmosphere is full of smoke and dust. If there are any Kaleri left down there, they are hiding underground. Kate Sullivan was trying to find signals from Kaleri survivors. I have something, she said. Very weak transmissions from the outer part of the system. Looks like a few damaged ships trying to stay hidden behind the gas giant. Set course for those ships, Jack ordered, but keep us hidden. I want to know what we are dealing with before we make contact. Captain Alex Bennett guided the ship carefully through the asteroid field around the gas giant. They found 3 small Kaleri vessels badly damaged and leaking air. The ships were trying to repair themselves, but they did not have enough supplies or tools. Jack opened communications with the lead Kaleri ship. The face that appeared on screen looked like a tall, thin human, but with blue skin and large silver eyes. The creature looked exhausted and afraid. This is Commander Vess, the Kaleri said. Are you here to help us, or to finish what the Vorthak started? We are humans, Jack replied. We heard your distress call and came to help. What happened to your world? Commander Vess closed his silver eyes for a moment. The Vorthak came 3 days ago with their war fleet. They said our world belonged to them now, and we had 1 hour to surrender. When we tried to negotiate, they started killing everyone they could find. They took our children and put them in slave ships. They said weak species do not deserve to live free. Lisa leaned forward. How many of your people survived? Maybe 300 on these ships, Vess replied. There might be more hiding on the planet, but the Vorthak are hunting them with ground troops. The war leader Thex said he wants to make an example of us so other species will not resist. Jack felt the anger burning stronger inside him. These Kaleri had done nothing wrong, and the Vorthak were killing them just because they could. He looked around his bridge and saw the same fury in his crew. Tony was gripping his weapon controls. Alex was staring at the planet with hard eyes. Lisa was crying, but her face showed determination. Kate was recording everything so other humans would know what happened here. Commander Vess, Jack said, we are going to help you, but first we need to know more about Vorthak weapons and tactics. Vess sent over data about Vorthak ships and weapons. Tony studied the information and smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Their ships are tough but not impossible to kill, he said. Their weapons are powerful, but they rely on brute force instead of strategy. They expect their enemies to run away or surrender quickly. They have never fought humans before, Alex said quietly. Jack opened a channel to the entire Endurance. This is the commander speaking. We have found survivors of a genocide. The species responsible is called the Vorthak, and they believe that might makes right. They kill children and enslave the weak. They think other species will submit to them out of fear. They are about to learn they are wrong. The ship suddenly felt different. Jack could hear colonists preparing for battle even though they were not soldiers. People were getting ready to fight because it was the right thing to do. The human instinct to protect the innocent was taking over. Signal the Vorthak fleet, Jack ordered Kate. Tell them this is Commander Morrison of the Human Ship Endurance. Tell them to stop their attack on the Kaleri and prepare to negotiate. Kate sent the message and they waited. The reply came quickly on an open channel so everyone could hear it. The voice was the same harsh, cruel tone they had heard before. This is War Leader Thex of the Vorthek Empire. Unknown species you have entered Vorthek territory without permission. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Your ship will make good target practice for my warriors. Jack took a deep breath. War Leader Thex, this is Commander Morrison. The Kaleri are under human protection now. Withdraw your forces and we can discuss this peacefully. Thex laughed and the sound was like breaking glass. Humans, another pathetic species that thinks words can stop warriors. You have one small ship against my entire fleet. Surrender now and I will kill you quickly. Resist and I will make you suffer before you die. Tony, Jack said calmly, target their lead warship. Locked on, Tony replied. Alex, bring us around. Kate, tell the Kaleri survivors to get behind us. Lisa, start recording everything. The Vorthek fleet moved toward the Endurance in a formation designed to intimidate enemies. 12 warships spread out like a net to surround the human vessel. They were not expecting a fight. They were expecting another easy victory over a weaker species. They were wrong. The Endurance moved with speed and precision that surprised the Vorthek. Alex flew the ship like it was a fighter instead of a colony vessel. Tony fired weapons with accuracy that came from years of human military training. The first Vorthek warship exploded before Thex realized the humans were actually fighting back. Impossible. Thex screamed over the radio. They are just one ship. The second Vorthek warship died when Tony put 3 missiles into its engine core. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. The other Vorthek ships finally started shooting back, but the humans were no longer where they expected them to be. Alex flew the Endurance through the Vorthek formation using moves that violated safety rules but kept them alive. Tony fired at weak points in Vorthek ship design that Lisa had identified from the captured data. Kate jammed Vorthek communications so they could not coordinate their attacks. The crew worked together like they had been fighting as a team for years. War Leader Thex watched 2 more of his ships die and finally realized he was not fighting weak prey. He was fighting predators who knew how to kill. The humans did not just defend themselves. They attacked with purpose and skill and something that looked like joy. All ships retreat, Thex ordered. We will return with more warriors. The surviving Vorthek ships ran away, leaving their dead behind. Jack looked at the wreckage floating in space and felt satisfied. The Kaleri were safe for now, and the Vorthek had learned that humans were not easy prey, but something had changed. During the battle, Jack and his crew had discovered they were very good at violence when they had a reason to fight. They had enjoyed destroying their enemies, and that realization was both exciting and frightening. The war between humans and Vorthek had begun, and neither side understood what they had started. Admiral Rick Carter received the message from Commander Morrison while he was eating breakfast on Earth. The report about the Kaleri massacre and the first battle with the Vorthek made him stop eating and call an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Within 6 hours, every major human military leader was gathered in the war room under the Pacific Ocean. Gentlemen and ladies, Rick said as he stood before the large screen showing Morrison's battle footage, we are at war. The enemy calls themselves the Vorthek Empire, and they specialize in killing defenseless civilians. They attacked the Kaleri people without warning and tried to do the same to our ship Endurance. They failed. General Susan Blake watched the video. Vorthek ships exploding. How many ships do they have? Intelligence estimates several thousand warships spread across dozens of conquered worlds, Rick replied. They have been building their empire for centuries by destroying anyone who cannot fight back. Colonel Steve Parker studied tactical data. On his tablet, they made a mistake attacking us. Every species they have faced before was peaceful. We are not peaceful when someone threatens innocent people. Dr. Lisa Harper had sent detailed reports about Vorthek psychology and culture. The information painted a picture of a species that saw violence as natural and mercy as weakness. They could not understand why anyone would fight to protect strangers. The Vorthik think strength is the only thing that matters, Rick told the council. They believe inferior species should be slaves or dead. They have never met a species that fights for moral reasons instead of survival. The vote to authorize unlimited military response was unanimous. Every human colony would be armed and defended. Every human ship would carry weapons. Any Vorthak vessel found in human space would be destroyed without warning, but the Vorthak were not waiting either. War leader Thex had returned to the Vorthak High Command with his report about the humans. The news that a single human ship had destroyed 4 Vorthak warships caused panic among the leadership. These humans are dangerous, Thex told the War Council. They fight with skills we have never seen. They work together like a pack of hunters. They seem to enjoy killing our warriors. High Commander Drax listened to the report with growing anger. The Vorthak Empire had never been defeated by an inferior species. How many humans are there? Unknown, Dex replied. But if they are, all like the ones we fought, then we have a serious problem. Drax made the decision that would doom his empire. We will attack human colonies immediately. We will show them that the Vorthak cannot be defeated. We will make examples of their worlds so they learn to fear us. The first Vorthak attack came at New Dallas, a farming colony on the edge of human space. The colonists had been warned about the threat, and they were ready. When Vorthak ships appeared in orbit, the farmers were waiting with weapons and determination. Dan Miller had been a soldier before he became a farmer. When the Vorthak landed troops near his town, he organized the other colonists into fighting groups. They used farm equipment as weapons and turned grain silos into fortresses. They fought with the fury of people defending their homes. The Vorthak expected easy victory against farmers. Instead, they found humans who used every dirty trick in the book to kill invaders. Dan's people set traps that used farm chemicals to blind Vorthak soldiers. They used tractors as armored vehicles to ram enemy positions. They fought with tools designed for growing food but used for making war. The Vorthak ground commander called for air support, but the colonists had prepared for that too. They used hunting rifles to shoot down Vorthak aircraft. They turned irrigation systems into weapons that flooded Vorthak positions with burning fuel. They showed the invaders that human civilians were as dangerous as human soldiers. After 3 days of brutal fighting, the Vorthak retreated from New Dallas. They had lost half their invasion force to farmers with improvised weapons. The survivors reported back to their commanders that human civilians fought like professional warriors. Similar attacks on 2 other human colonies ended the same way. The Vorthak won eventually, but they paid a terrible price for each victory. Human colonists fought to the death and took as many Vorthak with them as possible. Even when they lost, the humans made sure the victory cost more than it was worth. Colonel Parker began training new human military units based on what they learned from these battles. The Vorthak were strong, but they followed predictable tactics. They expected enemies to break and run when faced with superior force. Humans did not break and run. Humans got angry and started thinking of creative ways to kill their enemies. The Vorthak have a weakness, Parker told his officers. They cannot imagine fighting for anything except personal survival. They do not understand that humans will die to protect others. This makes them predictable. The human military began developing new weapons and tactics designed specifically to terrify the Vorthak. They studied Vorthak psychology and found ways to exploit their fears. They learned that Vorthak society was built on the idea that might makes right. If humans could prove they were stronger, then Vorthak morale would collapse. Dr. Harper worked with weapons designers to create tools that would cause maximum psychological damage to Vorthak forces. They developed sonic weapons that mimicked the sounds Vorthak made when they were afraid. They created visual displays that triggered panic responses in Vorthak brains. They turned human understanding of alien psychology into weapons. Meanwhile, the news of Vorthak attacks on human colonies spread through human space like wildfire. Every human who heard about the massacres felt the same burning anger that had driven Morrison to fight. Peaceful colonists started asking for military training. Merchant ships began carrying weapons. Human space became an armed camp ready for war. The transformation was happening faster than anyone expected. Humans were discovering they had a talent for violence when they believed their cause was just. The protective instinct that made them save the Kaleri was growing stronger and darker with each Vorthic attack. Captain Alex Bennett took command of a new warship called the Retribution. His crew included many veterans of the first battle, including Tony Rodriguez and Kate Sullivan. They hunted Vorthic ships in the space between colonies and showed no mercy to any they found. "Remember what they did to the Kaleri children?" Alex would tell his crew before each battle. "Remember what they tried to do to our colonies. Make them pay for every human life they took." The crew of the Retribution developed techniques that went beyond simple military tactics. They broadcast the screams of dying Vorthic across enemy communication channels. They left the wreckage of destroyed Vorthic ships as warnings to others. They began fighting not just to win, but to make their enemies suffer. Other human ships began copying these methods. The war became less about defending territory and more about punishing the Vorthok for their crimes. Human forces started taking prisoners not for information but to use as examples. They wanted other Vorthok to see what happened to those who attacked innocent people. The Vorthic Empire began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something in humanity that was far more dangerous than simple military strength. They had triggered a moral fury that would not be satisfied until every Vorthok paid for their crimes. High Commander Drax received reports of human tactics that made even hardened Vorthic warriors afraid. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were conducting a campaign of terror designed to break Vorthic will to fight. They had learned to weaponize their own righteousness. The fire of human rage was spreading across the galaxy, and nothing the Vorthok could do would put it out. 6 months after the first battle, Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the command center of the human fleet watching as another Vorthok world burned. The planet below had been a military stronghold where the Vorthok trained their soldiers and built their weapons. Now it was a smoking ruin filled with the screams of the defeated. Morrison had changed during the months of war. The man who once hesitated to fight had become someone who planned battles like an artist creates paintings. He studied each engagement to find new ways to break Vorthic morale. Victory was no longer enough. The enemy had to suffer. "How many Vorthic survivors?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. "About 10,000 military personnel and 50,000 civilians," Lieutenant Amy Foster replied. "They are requesting terms of surrender." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Tell them they can surrender when they explain what happened to the Kaleri children. Until then, we continue orbital bombardment." Dr. Lisa Harper watched from her science station and felt sick. The woman who had once cried for alien refugees now helped design weapons that caused maximum psychological trauma. She had learned to study Vorthic brain patterns to find better ways to induce terror and despair. "Admiral," Lisa said quietly, "the bombardment is hitting civilian areas now." "The Vorthok did not spare Kaleri civilians," Morrison replied. "They do not deserve mercy they never showed others." The fleet continued its attack until the Vorthic planet stopped sending distress signals. When the bombardment finally ended, the world below looked like the surface of a dead moon. Morrison felt satisfied as he watched the smoke rise from what had once been cities on the bridge of the destroyer Vengeance. Captain Alex Bennett reviewed reports from the ground invasion of another Vorthic world. His troops had taken the planet in 3 days, but they had spent 2 weeks making examples of the survivors. The Vorthic prisoners were kept in camps where they were forced to watch videos of their own defeats. Sergeant Mike Ching supervised one of these camps with efficiency that scared even his own men. He had learned that breaking Vorthic spirits was more effective than killing them quickly. Living Vorthok who had given up hope spread despair to others faster than dead ones created martyrs. "How are our guests today?" Bennett asked as he toured the camp. 17 more suicides last night," Chun replied. "The rest are asking to be executed. I told them they had to earn death by providing intelligence about other Vorthic positions." Bennett nodded approvingly. The humans had discovered that Vorthic psychology made them vulnerable to certain types of psychological pressure. They could endure physical pain, but mental anguish broke them completely. The humans had become experts at providing exactly the right amount of both. Lieutenant Foster had developed interrogation techniques that left Vorthak prisoners begging for mercy within hours. She used their own cultural values against them by proving they were weak and worthless according to their own standards. She made them hate themselves more than they feared death. The key is making them realize they deserve what is happening to them, Foster explained to new interrogators. Once they accept they are inferior, the rest is easy. They will do anything to prove they are not completely worthless. The human military machine had evolved beyond simple conquest. They had created a system designed to destroy enemy will to exist. Captured Vorthak were not just defeated soldiers. They were broken beings who carried the message of human superiority back to their own people. Colonel Steve Parker commanded ground forces that had perfected the art of psychological warfare. His troops did not just occupy Vorthak worlds. They conducted systematic campaigns to eliminate Vorthak cultural identity. They destroyed monuments and temples. They banned Vorthak language and customs. They made it clear that Vorthak civilization was a disease that had to be cured. "We are not invaders," Parker told his officers. "We are surgeons cutting out a cancer." The Vorthak way of life created monsters who killed children. That way of life must die completely. The methods Parker used would have horrified the humans, who first fought to save the Kaleri. His troops conducted public executions of Vorthak leaders. They forced Vorthak civilians to watch as their heroes were revealed to be cowards who begged for mercy. They systematically destroyed everything the Vorthak took pride in, but the most disturbing change was in the human soldiers themselves. They had begun to enjoy their work too much. Troops competed to see who could break Vorthak prisoners fastest. Officers collected trophies from defeated enemies. The righteous anger that had started the war was becoming something darker and more addictive. Tony Rodriguez commanded a unit that specialized in hunting down fleeing Vorthak ships. His crews had developed techniques that went far beyond military necessity. They disabled enemy vessels without destroying them so they could board and capture the crews alive. They wanted prisoners who could be used to send messages to other Vorthak. "Dead enemies cannot spread fear," Rodriguez explained to his gunners. "Living enemies who have seen what we can do are worth more than any weapon." The human fleet began carrying mobile prison ships filled with captured Vorthak. These prisoners were used as psychological weapons against their own people. Human forces would broadcast video messages showing former Vorthak warriors reduced to broken slaves begging their captors for food. Kate Sullivan had become an expert at propaganda warfare. She created broadcasts that were designed to destroy Vorthak morale across their entire empire. Her programs showed Vorthak prisoners confessing that their cause was hopeless and their leaders were cowards. She made the enemy afraid to fight by proving that capture was worse than death. "Fear is more contagious than courage," Sullivan told her staff. "One broken prisoner can demoralize an entire enemy fleet. We are not just fighting ships and soldiers. We are fighting the idea that the Vorthak deserve to exist." The turning point came when human forces attacked the Vorthak moon base orbiting their homeworld. The assault was not strategically necessary. The base posed no real threat to human operations. But it was a symbol of Vorthak power and Morrison wanted to destroy it. For psychological effect, the battle for the moon base lasted 6 hours. The Vorthak defenders fought desperately because they knew defeat would mean the end of their empire's prestige. They threw everything they had at the human attackers, but it was not enough. Human forces had learned to fight with a cold fury that could not be stopped. When the base fell, Morrison ordered that no prisoners be taken. Every Vorthak defender was killed, and their bodies were left floating in space where other Vorthak could see them. The message was clear. Resistance meant death, and surrender meant something worse. High Commander Drax watched the destruction of the moon base from his flagship and realized the war was lost. The humans had become something that the Vorthak could not understand or defeat. They fought not for territory or resources, but for the complete destruction of everything the Vorthak represented. They do not want to conquer us, Drax told his war council. They want to erase us from the universe. They will not stop until every Vorthak is dead or wishes they were dead. The Vorthak Empire began to fracture as reports of human tactics spread through their military. Soldiers refused orders to fight humans. Commanders abandoned their posts rather than face capture. The idea that might makes right collapsed when faced with humans who were stronger and far more ruthless than any Vorthak had ever imagined, but the humans were changing too. The moral certainty that had justified their actions was becoming an addiction to power and control. They had started the war to protect innocent people. Now they fought because they enjoyed proving their superiority over the enemy that had dared to challenge them. Morrison looked at reports of Vorthak surrender offers and felt only contempt. The enemy wanted to negotiate as if they had something to bargain with. They did not understand that humans no longer cared about ending the war quickly. They cared about making sure the Vorthak paid the full price for their crimes. The humans had become everything they claimed to be fighting against. They were now the ones who believed might makes right. They were the ones who showed no mercy to the weak. But they told themselves it was different because their cause was just the galaxy watched in horror as humanity revealed its true nature, the species. That had once been heroes saving refugees had become something far more terrifying than the monsters they had defeated. 1 year after the war began, Admiral Morrison stood before a massive viewing screen showing the Vorthak breeding world of Nexus Prime. The planet below was covered in cities designed to raise and train young Vorthak warriors. It was the heart of their empire's ability to replace losses and continue fighting. Morrison had come here not to destroy it, but to break it completely. Begin the demonstration, Morrison ordered his tactical staff on the planet's surface, Colonel Parker's ground. Forces had surrounded the main breeding complex where 10 million young Vorthak lived and learned. Instead of bombing the facility, Parker had something much more effective planned. He was going to make the adult Vorthak watch as their children learned the truth about human superiority. The human forces had set up massive screens around the breeding complex. On these screens, they projected videos of every major Vorthak defeat. They showed Vorthak warriors crying for mercy. They displayed the wreckage of the once mighty Vorthak fleet. They made it clear that the species the young Vorthak had been taught to respect was nothing but weaklings who had finally met their masters. Dr. Lisa Harper monitored the psychological effects from her research ship in orbit. She had become an expert at measuring despair, and her instruments showed that Vorthak morale was collapsing faster than they had hoped. The sight of their own failures was destroying their will to reproduce and continue their species. The adult Vorthak are showing classic signs of species-wide depression, Harper reported to Morrison. Birth rates have dropped by 70% in areas under human control. They are beginning to believe their species does not deserve to exist, Morrison smiled with satisfaction. Physical destruction was temporary, but psychological destruction lasted forever. The humans had learned to attack not just Vorthak bodies, but their souls. They were systematically removing the Vorthak desire to continue living on the destroyer. Vengeance Captain Bennett watched as his crew prepared for another demonstration of human superiority. They had captured a Vorthak admiral named Corax and were going to use him to send a message to the remaining enemy forces. Bennett had learned that breaking high-ranking prisoners was more effective than killing 1,000 soldiers. Sergeant Chun brought Admiral Corax to the bridge in chains. The once proud Vorthak leader looked like a broken old man. Months of human hospitality had taught him that resistance was hopeless and survival depended on pleasing his captors. Admiral Corax, Bennett said with false politeness, "Are you ready to address your former colleagues?" Corax nodded weakly. He had learned that cooperation brought slightly better treatment, while defiance brought only more creative forms of suffering. The humans had taught him that pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. The broadcast went out across Vorthak communication networks. Admiral Corax appeared on screen looking defeated and desperate. He spoke in a voice that shook with fear and shame. "This is Admiral Corax speaking to all Vorthak forces," he said. I have seen the true power of humanity, and I know our cause is hopeless. The humans are superior to us in every way. They are stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than we ever were. Resistance will only bring more suffering. Surrender now and beg for mercy while mercy is still possible. The message ended with Korax kneeling before human officers and thanking them for allowing him to live. The psychological impact on Vorthak forces was immediate and devastating. If their own admiral believed the cause was hopeless, then what chance did ordinary soldiers have? Lieutenant Foster had perfected techniques for breaking enemy prisoners. That went beyond anything used in previous wars. Her interrogation centers were places where Vorthak entered as warriors and left as broken shells who existed only to please their human masters. She had learned to destroy their sense of self so completely that they became willing participants in their own degradation. The key is making them grateful for whatever small mercy you show them, Foster explained to her trainees. Once they start thanking you for not killing them immediately, you own their minds completely. Foster's methods had produced hundreds of Vorthak who competed to provide intelligence about their former comrades. They betrayed military secrets, revealed hidden bases, and helped plan attacks on their own people. They did this not because they were forced to, but because they genuinely believed serving humans was their proper place in the universe. The human war machine had evolved into something that would have terrified the people who started the conflict. They had facilities dedicated to breaking enemy minds. They had specialists who studied the most effective ways to induce despair. They had turned psychological torture into a science. Tony Rodriguez commanded a fleet of ships designed specifically for terrorizing enemy populations. His vessels carried broadcast equipment that could transmit human propaganda directly into Vorthak homes. They showed videos of human superiority 24 hours a day until entire Vorthak worlds begged for the broadcasts to stop. "We are not invaders," Rodriguez told his crews. "We are teachers. We are showing the Vorthak the natural order of the universe. Humans are meant to rule and other species are meant to serve." The transformation of human thinking was complete. They no longer saw themselves as defenders of justice. They were now convinced they were naturally superior beings who had a right to dominate other species. The war had revealed what they believed was their true nature. Kate Sullivan's propaganda broadcasts reached every corner of the galaxy. Her programs showed humans as perfect beings who brought order and civilization to lesser species. She portrayed the war not as a conflict, but as a correction of natural law. The Vorthak had temporarily upset the balance by pretending to be equals with humans, but now the proper order was being restored. "Every species has its place," Sullivan announced to her galaxy-wide audience. "The humans are meant to lead because they are the strongest and most intelligent. Other species are meant to follow because that is how they can best serve the greater good." These broadcasts were not just aimed at the Vorthak. They were meant to educate all alien species about the new reality. Humans were the dominant force in the galaxy now, and everyone else needed to accept their proper position as subjects of human authority. The breaking point came when human forces captured the Vorthak High Command on their capital world. Instead of executing the leadership quickly, Morrison decided to make their defeat a public spectacle that would be remembered forever. High Commander Drax and his war council were put on trial in a massive arena where thousands of Vorthak civilians were forced to watch. The charges were not just war crimes, but the deeper sin of believing themselves equal to humans. The trial was designed to prove that Vorthak arrogance had caused all the suffering of the war. "You stand accused of the crime of thinking you were worthy opponents for the human race," Morrison announced to the packed arena. "Your punishment is not death, but the knowledge that you were never anything more than animals pretending to be civilized." The trial lasted for days, and every moment was broadcast across the galaxy. Vorthak leaders were forced to confess their inferiority and beg forgiveness forever, thinking they could challenge human authority. They were made to thank their captors for the lesson in humility. When the trial ended, the Vorthak leadership was not executed. Instead, they were kept as living examples of what happened to species that forgot their place. They were displayed in cages and forced to perform tricks for the entertainment of human visitors. They had been reduced from proud warriors to broken pets. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. This was what happened to those who challenged human supremacy. The humans had not just won a war. They had proven their natural right to rule over all other forms of life. But in the quiet moments between victories, Morrison sometimes wondered what had happened to the man who once hesitated to fight. He remembered caring about justice and protecting the innocent. Now he cared only about proving human dominance and crushing anyone who questioned it. The humans had become the monsters they claimed to be fighting. But they told themselves it was different because they were stronger and smarter than everyone else. In their minds, might had always made right. They had just needed a war to reveal this truth about themselves. The galaxy trembled in fear of what humanity had become. The species that had once saved refugees now collected other species like trophies. They had revealed their true nature, and it was more terrifying than any nightmare their enemies had ever imagined. The war ended on a Tuesday morning when the last Vorthic resistance cell sent a message of complete surrender to Admiral Morrison. The transmission came from the ruins of what had once been the Vorthic Imperial Palace. The voice belonged to War Leader Vex, the same commander who had first challenged human authority over the Kaleri system. "This is War Leader Vex speaking for all remaining Vorthak forces," the broken voice said. "We surrender unconditionally to human authority. We accept that we are an inferior species that does not deserve to exist as equals. We beg for mercy and ask only that our children be allowed to serve human masters faithfully." Morrison listened to the surrender message from his flagship orbiting Earth. Around him stood the officers who had helped him win the most complete victory in galactic history. They had not just defeated an enemy. They had convinced that enemy to accept permanent inferiority as the natural order of things. Dr. Lisa Harper reviewed the final psychological assessments of Vorthak populations across their former empire. The numbers told a story of complete mental collapse. Vorthak birth rates had dropped to near zero. Suicide rates had increased by 3,000%. The surviving Vorthak showed no desire to rebuild their civilization or maintain their cultural identity. "They are completely broken," Harper reported to Morrison. "Most Vorthak now believe their species was a mistake that needed to be corrected. They see human domination as a kindness that saves them from the shame of pretending to be worthy of independence." Morrison felt satisfied as he read the report. The humans had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had not just conquered an enemy, they had convinced that enemy to be grateful for the conquest. The Vorthak now served their human masters with genuine enthusiasm because they believed it was their proper place in the universe. Captain Bennett returned to Earth as a hero, but he knew the truth about what they had accomplished. The man who had once questioned whether they should fight at all now commanded fleets that patrolled the galaxy enforcing human supremacy. He had learned to enjoy the power that came from being feared by entire species. "The other alien species are requesting meetings," Bennett reported to Morrison. "They want to discuss their status in the new galactic order," Morrison smiled. The non-human species had watched what happened to the Vorthak, and they were eager to avoid the same fate. They were ready to accept human authority without the need for costly wars. Fear was proving to be humanity's most effective weapon. The meetings took place on Earth in facilities designed to emphasize human superiority. Alien ambassadors were required to kneel when addressing human officials. They were given translators who made their voices sound weak and pleading. They were housed in quarters that were comfortable but clearly marked as accommodations for inferior beings. Ambassador Korvex of the Zelani Federation spoke for most of the alien species when he addressed the human leadership. His words were broadcast across the galaxy so every species could hear humanity's new position clearly. "We acknowledge that humans are the superior species in this galaxy," Korvex said while kneeling before Morrison. "We accept our role as subjects of human Authority. We ask only that you allow us to serve you faithfully and prove our worth through obedience. Morrison accepted the submission graciously but made it clear that human patience was limited. Any species that showed signs of independence or resistance would receive the same treatment as the Vorthek. The choice was simple: serve humans willingly, or be broken until service became the only option. Colonel Parker established training centers throughout human space, where alien species could learn to serve their new masters properly. These facilities taught aliens to speak human languages, follow human customs, and think of human needs before their own. Graduation required a public declaration of gratitude for human guidance and protection. "We are not oppressors," Parker explained to his staff. "We are civilizers." These species were living in chaos and disorder before we showed them the proper way to organize society. They should thank us for the structure and purpose we have given their lives. The alien species did thank them. They competed to show their loyalty and usefulness to human authority. They renamed their worlds after human heroes. They adopted human customs and abandoned their own traditions. They taught their children that serving humans was the highest honor any alien could achieve. Lieutenant Foster established psychological evaluation centers that monitored alien populations for signs of discontent or rebellion. Her teams could identify potential troublemakers before they became actual problems. The treatment was always the same: reduction to the same broken state that had worked so well with the Vorthek. "Prevention is better than cure," Foster told her psychological warfare specialists. "It is much easier to break someone who is just starting to think rebellious thoughts than to wait until they organize actual resistance." The human empire expanded rapidly as more species begged to join rather than risk being conquered. They offered their resources, their knowledge, and their labor in exchange for the privilege of serving under human protection. They genuinely believed that human rule was better than the chaos of independence. Tony Rodriguez commanded the patrol fleets that enforced order throughout human space. His ships visited alien worlds regularly to remind the inhabitants of their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. These visits were always welcomed by local alien leaders who competed to show their appreciation for human attention. "The aliens are happier now than they ever were before," Rodriguez reported to Morrison. "They have purpose and direction. They no longer waste time on useless dreams of equality or independence. They focus on serving their betters and finding satisfaction in useful work." Kate Sullivan's propaganda networks reached every corner of the galaxy with messages about the benefits of human rule. Her programs showed alien species living in harmony under human guidance. They portrayed independence as a cruel illusion that only led to suffering and war. Submission to human authority was presented as the path to peace and prosperity. "Every species has found its proper role," Sullivan announced in her daily broadcasts. "The humans lead because they are naturally suited for leadership. The other species follow because they are naturally suited for service. This is not oppression, but the restoration of natural order." The transformation was complete when human children began learning about their natural superiority in school. They were taught that humans were biologically and mentally superior to all other species. They learned that ruling over aliens was not just their right, but their responsibility to maintain galactic peace and order. Morrison visited these schools regularly to speak to the next generation of human leaders. He told them stories about the war against the Vorthek and how it had revealed humanity's true nature. He explained that their ancestors had once believed in equality between species, but the war had corrected this dangerous delusion. "We learned that compassion without strength leads to suffering," Morrison told a classroom of 10-year-old children. "We learned that some species are meant to lead while others are meant to follow. We learned that humans are the natural rulers of the galaxy because we are the only species strong enough to maintain order." The children listened with bright, eager faces and asked questions about when they would get their own alien servants. They had never known a world where humans were not in charge, and they could not imagine why anyone would want it to be different. They saw alien submission as natural as gravity or sunlight. But sometimes in quiet moments Morrison remembered the Man he had been before the war. He remembered caring about justice and protecting the innocent. He remembered believing that all intelligent species deserved respect and dignity. Those memories felt like dreams from someone else's life. The humans had saved the galaxy from the Vorthek threat, but in doing so they had become something far worse. They had revealed that their capacity for moral outrage was just another form of predatory instinct. Their desire to protect the weak had transformed into a need to dominate the strong. The galaxy was safe from war, because no species dared to resist human authority. Peace reigned because every conflict was prevented by the knowledge of what humans did to those who opposed them. Order existed because everyone knew their place in the hierarchy with humans at the top, but the cost of this peace was the freedom and dignity of every non-human species in the galaxy. They lived as willing slaves who thanked their masters for the privilege of servitude. They had been convinced that their own submission was a gift they gave to their human betters. The humans had become the nightmare that made all other nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. They had weaponized their own righteousness and turned their moral fury into a tool for absolute domination. They ruled not through fear alone, but through the terrible power of making their subjects grateful for their own subjugation. Morrison stood on his flagship looking out at the stars and felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. They had brought order to chaos and peace to a violent galaxy. They had proven that humans were the natural leaders of all intelligent life. They had revealed their true destiny as the species that would guide the galaxy into a better future.